Hello and welcome to the third module in this course, Photoshop Flyer Design for Beginners. And in this module, we'll be looking at working with layers. And as usual, what are the topics we are going to be looking at? What are the things we'll be considering in this particular video? We'll be looking at layer types and naming. We'll be looking at grouping your layers for easy workflow. We'll be looking at layer masks. We'll be looking at adjustment layers. We'll be looking at blending modes. So without further ado, let's get started. Layer types and naming. Now in Photoshop, everything you add to your design lives on its own layer. I kind of explained that in one of the previous videos where we were drawing a couple of rectangles. Now, how should you see layers? Think of layers like transparent sheets of paper, right, stacked on top of each other. Now, if you have a transparent sheet of paper or a nylon and you paint a part of the one on top, you paint a little part of the one under it, you paint a little part of the one under that. By the time you put the three together, you are going to see everything because it's transparent. So that's basically how you should think of the layer, and everything you do in Photoshop actually has its own layer. Let's quickly open the Photoshop application. Alright, now we have Photoshop open. So like I explained in the previous video about creating a new file, you can use the shortcut Ctrl N to bring up this document window, and the size of the sign what we are going to be working on, it's 8 by 10. You can use 4 by 5 like I explained before also, and your resolution you can use 72, but I'm going to use 300. And lastly, make sure artboard is checked, because if you don't have artboard checked, whatever you drag out of your artboard to your canvas will not be visible. So let's make sure that's checked. RGB color, we basically don't tamper with the settings here, so just click on create. Alright, back to our slides. So we have different types of layers and each one behaves slightly differently. Now we have text layers, we have shape layers, we have image layers and adjustment layers. Now text layers are editable, which means you can always change the font size, you can change the text itself, you can change several properties. Let's create a text layer. You should have your Photoshop open by now. You can use the shortcut T to switch to the text tool. So you just click on your artboard and it gives you the default text in Photoshop and main design softwares, which is the Logan Ipsum. Now if the color it gives you is not black, you can just come here, you can change the properties here. So just click on this, then change it. Let's say it was red, you change it to black. Now this is a text layer. You can see that it's already appearing on our layers panel. We can hide it and we can unhide it. If you want to hide it, just click on this eye icon that you have beside your layer. Like I said, you can edit whatever you typed in a text layer. It's editable. So let's type something like hello, I'm Chroma. You can put your name here, and I love these pictures. Now it's possible when you type your text has a lot of space in between it, this way or this way. How do you change that? You come to the properties tab or the properties panel here. This is where you edit the vertical gap, change it to auto, and the horizontal spacing, we change it from 140 to 0. Yeah, this looks better. Alright, I'm going to click on this check mark here to confirm that I'm done with editing the text. So I have this hello, I'm Chroma, and I love taking pictures. So this is basically a text layer. Next, we'll be looking at shape layers. Now, shape layers stay sharp no matter how much you resize them. What's our shape tool? The shortcut for our shape tool is U, or you can definitely come here to just pick your shape. Let's use a rectangle. So you just click on the canvas and drag it out. So you have your rectangle shape that way. Now if the color in your rectangle is not black like this, you can come to properties panel. You always change properties of an element in the properties panel, most especially elements you are creating from scratch in Photoshop itself, not elements you import from outside Photoshop. So let's come here, click on this view, click on this icon here. It takes you to the color palette. Then you can pick shades of red. You can drag up here to actually switch the color. Let's say I want to pick blue, for example. And if you want to practice with the specific color I'm using, you can just look over here. This is our next code. It changes with every little change you make here, right? And it's like a code for a specific color and a specific shade of that color. So you can just come here and type 0500C7. Alright, so you have that. We've changed it to blue. And like I said, it's scalable. I can increase the size, reduce the size. It's still going to stay sharp. So let's click on Ctrl Z to go back to where we were before. I want several copies of this rectangle. So how do I make a copy? I'm going to click on the rectangle, Ctrl C and Ctrl V. It gives me another duplicate. Then I can keep duplicating because I want 6. Ctrl V. I'll keep on pressing Ctrl V. The fourth one, Ctrl V. The fifth one, and Ctrl V for the last one. This is one way to copy elements. And another easier way to copy the elements is just click on what you want to copy, hold on Alt on your keyboard, then click and drag. You've created a copy. Alt, click and drag. You have another copy. Then I can select this, put it together, hold on Alt, click and drag. Now I have 6 instead of using Ctrl C and Ctrl V 6 times. This is a very fast way to create copies of the same thing. Now we'll be looking at image layers. Image layers are pixel based and can lose quality if stretched too far. If you check the description of this video, you're going to see the link to every resource I'm going to be using here, so you can simply download them and follow along. Yeah, pardon me, I forgot to mention something about the text layer when we're working on it. Now when you create your text layer, your default font might be another thing. It might not be this font I'm using, it might look different. So how do you change your fonts? The same way we come to properties, we look at the fonts. I'm presently using Satoshi, so you can choose a similar font, Poppins, Satoshi, Montserrat. Yeah, pick whatever font looks similar, of course looks similar to the one I'm using. You can use Arial too. Yes, Arial is one of the default fonts you'll find in Photoshop. I'm actually going to create a short video on how to get fonts and install them on your PC, but just use the ones we have for now. Now I'm going to the resources folder to bring in these images I want to use into Photoshop. So selecting everything, I'm just going to drag them over on Photoshop and bring them in. When you drag them in, definitely you have to place them, so you can come here and keep clicking on OK. Yeah, we have all 6 images placed on our artboard now. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the images out of the artboard to the canvas, so I'll be able to see my artboard. Let me drag this, let me drag this, drag this. Yeah, there's enough space to just have everything outside. Now remember when we were trying to create a new document, I said make sure artboard is ticked. Now if artboard was not ticked, you won't see this artboard 1 here, and when I drag this out of the artboard, I'm not going to see it anymore. The reason why I'm seeing them even outside the artboard is because I have artboards ticked. Alright, so what do we want to do next? We want all these pictures in, each of these rectangles we've created. Let me select everything and drag it down. So the next concept we'll be looking at is how to create a clip mask. So let's say I drag this here back to my canvas. You click on Ctrl C to bring out the transform controls so you can resize. Hold on Shift, then drag from one of the edges, right, so that you can scale down proportionally. If you don't hold Shift, you see you are going to distort the image, but if you hold on Shift, it's going to scale down or scale up proportionally. Click on Enter, then bring it here. Now I want this picture to be inside this rectangle. I want to use it as a frame, so let me put it over it and try to locate the rectangle. Now I'm coming back to my layers panel and trying to hover on all these rectangles I've created. This is not it. You can see a little highlight when I hover on something. When you hover on something in the layers panel, you are going to see a little highlight of it. And if you hover on the canvas too, it's going to be highlighted on the layers panel. So I know this is what I want to use, that rectangle one on my layers panel. So I'm going to drag this and bring it over rectangle 1. Now you see how my cursor looks now. When I come over here, it changes to this little hand we have. Now if you hold on Alt and you come to the intersection between the image you dragged in and the rectangle you want to use as a mask, it changes to a square and an arrow. So if you click on it, the picture goes into the rectangle. So you can drag the picture around anyhow, but it's not going to show up outside the frame of the rectangle. So let's use Ctrl T again to bring out the transform controls and the size. Alright, so we'll be doing the same thing for the others. Let's bring it into our artboard. Bring it over rectangle 1, copy. Yeah, create a clip mask. Like I said, to create a clip mask, you click on the image, you hold on Alt on your keyboard, then you hover on the intersection between the image and the frame you want to use. Now you can resize the image after that. Remember, you hold on Shift to resize proportionally. So I'm just going to speed up this process. It's the same thing I'm basically repeating for all the pictures. Yeah. Do not worry about perfection yet. Just make sure you get the images into the frame as it is here. Alright, our design is coming up. Next, let's bring in the background, another stock image downloaded online. This is the background we'll be using. Let's bring it in. Good. Now we see that it has covered everything we are doing. Why? Because like I said, you should see layers as sheets stacked over each other. Now, if something is above another thing, you can't see what's under definitely unless you take what's on top and put it at the back. Now we want this to be our background, which definitely means it should be at the back. Now you can just click on it and drag it all the way down. If you are having issues, dragging it all the way down, you can drop it somewhere, then you pick it up again and keep dragging until you're at the end. Then I'm going to bring this yellow chroma. I'm going to bring it up here. Yeah, now I have this layer at the back of every other layer, and definitely there's a shortcut for that. You click on Ctrl Shift and left bracket on your keyboard. It takes the layer selected button instead of dragging manually. Now there isn't much contrast between my text and my background. My text is black and my background is dark. So what do? I can change this to white, my text to T, click on it, select everything. I can come up here or come to the properties panel to change the color. Let's use this instead. Change the color to white, click on OK and mark. Now I want this to actually fill up the entire code. You can see we have white here and we have white here, so let me just increase the size. Exactly, increase the size like this. I want just a little bit of the glow to be obvious, so I'm going to shift it up this way and click on enter. Yeah, and you can see our first design is actually coming up gradually. Then what's next are we trying to bring in? Yes, this butterfly. Let's bring in this butterfly. Alright, we have a butterfly in. You import from the resources. Like we have the butterfly here, so you just click on it, then drag it into Photoshop. So back to Photoshop. I want the butterfly to be somewhere around here, so let me increase the size and put it here. Now I need a copy. How do we copy? Alt, click and drag. Let's bring another one here and Ctrl T to transform. We want to flip it the other way around. Ctrl T transform, then right click, flip horizontal. Yeah, so Ctrl T again to reduce the size because I just want it somewhere around here. Alright, yeah, I'm cool with the way it looks now. You can enter to lock. So now we've looked at text layers, we've looked at image layers, we've looked at shape layers. This is an image, the background is an image. So what other type of layer do we also have in Photoshop? We have adjustment layers. Right now, adjustment layers do not add visible contents on their own. They affect the layer below them. That is, when you bring in an adjustment layer, you can't actually see that adjustment layer. You only see the effect that layer has on every layer below it. This makes adjustment layers very useful for non-destructive editing. Now let's go back to Photoshop and use some adjustment layers. And these images I have here, I actually want them to be black and white. I don't like the parts that we have several colors here, although we don't have a lot of colors available. I mean, this is like gold, this is beige if I'm not wrong. Basically we have a lot of colors, so I'm going to click on this image here. You can see it's selected on the layers panel. I'm going to come down to this icon here. If you look at, there is a little text that comes up. It says create a new field or adjustment layer. So if I click on that, I can actually pick one of these. Now everything has what it does, and gradually when you are working on several flyers design, would look at several adjustment layers, but I'm just going to pick one to explain what it does. Now let me click on black and white and add it. Okay, this is not going to explain what I want better. Let's Ctrl Z. Let's pick this image we have here because it's at the top. Go back to our adjustment layers, pick black and white. Now you can see that every picture that is below black and white adjustment layer turns to black and white. Now you can't see black and white really as a layer on its own. You only see the effects on every layer below it. So I'm just going to leave it this way. Alright, let's close our properties window. Now if this butterfly was below the black and white layer, for example the black and white adjustment layer, it's also going to turn to black and white because adjustment layers affect everything below them. Let's drag this butterfly down here. For example, you can see it turns to black and white. Let's drag it above again. The black and white adjustment layer does not affect it again. Next, we'll be looking at layer types and naming. Now as your design grows, you can see we've started designing, and now instead of having just 1 or 2 layers to just explain rectangles, we have a lot of layers. Let me count: 1 2 3 4 5 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16. I think we have about 17 layers now. So the more your design goes, the more the layer panel gets messy, right? It gets messy very quickly. You can see that you can barely recognize what is what here. Which one is which one? You don't know again. This is where naming layers becomes helpful, right? Instead of having as layer 1 random names rectangle 5, you can just rename them based on whatever they contain. So let's go back. Now this is our background image. Instead of having it as 1476D87, this does not provide any information. You double click on the name and you change it. Let's change it to background lady TL to represent top left, lady CM center middle, now you can see layers are named now and it's more clearer. You might not need to rename the rectangle 1 copy 3 rectangle because you've already named the layers clipped into it, so you just know, oh, this is the rectangle holding the lady at the bottom right. Now that being said, I'll be honest, personally I actually don't name layers. The only time I name layers is when I'm working with other designers and I want them to be able to understand my layers and understand what I've done without stressing too much. But as a beginner in graphic design, if you have the time, you can definitely rename your layers. Now next we'll be looking at is grouping for easy workflow. What's the shortcut for grouping? Ctrl G to group items together. Now grouping is simply packing all related or connected items together in a single group. Now it's one of the easiest ways to keep your work organized, just as renaming layers is to keep your work organized. Grouping also keeps your work organized. Now when a design starts to grow, when you have a lot of layers, when you group together, it reduces clutter and makes the layers panel easier to manage. Let's go back to Photoshop. What do you think is related here? I think all these images and the rectangles are related. You can just see them as models, right? So I'm going to click on this lady, then come to the last element in that group, hold on Shift and click on it. Now I have everything selected. So I'm going to press Ctrl G on my keyboard to group it together. Another way to group is to come to this folder icon, click on it, it creates a group. It's the same thing. So let's rename our group to models. Now you can see our layers panel. It's now very much simplified. I can hide all the models at once. I can unhide all the models. Now I can apply the same effects or changes to everything together because it's now in the group. Now you might ask, well, if they are in a group, we should be able to move everything together. That's what makes sense, right? But if you click on one of the items and try to drag it, it's just going to open the group and you have only that item selected. So let's select our group, close it back, Then you come to this tools panel here. Remember I said it's just a part of the software where you only come once in a while designing. This is the first time we actually come in here since we started. So we click on this drop down and change from layer to group. Now that we have group, if I click on any element in the group, I'm going to hold and drag everything together. This actually makes your work easier. Sometimes there's a disadvantage, however, and that is the fact that you cannot select a single image out of all this. You have to open the group manually in the layers panel, try to locate it, click on it, hold on control, then you move the elements. If you don't hold on control, it's still going to move everything. So if you have group selected here, you locate the elements here and you hold on control to move. So I'm just going to click on Ctrl Z. Yeah, because I've scattered some things. Ctrl Z. Next, we are going to be looking at layer masks, and while we are looking at layer masks, I'm actually going to be explaining blending modes. Now let's look at the image in this slide and pick my pen again. You can see the hand here, you can see the body, but you can't see the face, right? So that's what a layer mask does. A layer mask in Photoshop is a powerful way to hide or reveal parts of a layer without permanently deleting everything. If this were to be Photoshop now, I can bring back the face if I was the one that took it away because I used layer mask. Using layer mask helps you to keep your workflow flexible. Instead of erasing parts of a layer and risking mistakes, you can mask or mask and fine-tune endlessly as much as you want. Let's go to Photoshop to explain this. Let me bring a copy of this butterfly to the top here to just explain layer masks. Now to create a layer mask, you come to this icon over here, you hover on it, it tells you, oh, this is a layer mask. So create a layer mask on the object selected. Now you can see the thumbnail of the butterfly itself, and you can see the thumbnail representing the layer mask. Every adjustment layer also has a layer mask with it, so that you can control where the adjustment applies. Even let me just use the adjustment layer to explain how a layer mask works. So let's delete this. Now remember we used black and white and we applied it to all models, so everything below the black and white layer. Now if I want to hide this effect from some parts of my design that is under it, I'm just going to click on this layer mask. I'll click on B on my keyboard, which takes me to the brush tool. This is the brush tool over here. Let me increase the size. How do you increase the size? You come to brush properties here and increase the size this way. You can see it's increasing. And if you can't see any of this stuff here, if you can't see your layers, if you can't see any of the panels I'm actually selecting, if you can't see properties, you can just come to Windows workspace and select graphic and web, or you select essentials default, or you can come here, try to locate it. Oh, I'm looking for brushes, I need brushes, so you just click on brushes and it's going to appear here if it was not there before. So I'm going to close it. Now this is how a layer mask works. I want you to pay attention to this. If you paint on a layer mask with black, it's going to hide that part. If you paint on a layer mask with white, it's going to show that part. Now let's say I want to take out the black and white effect from this image. I'm going to come here, click on this. I can change it to black, but that's not advisable. Click on this little arrow here to switch from white to black. Yes, make sure black is on top and white is below. And should you have another color like red or ash and it's looking like this, you can just click on D on your keyboard so it goes back to default, and you click on X to switch. Now I want to hide the effects on this, so I start painting, just click and drag. You can see it's hiding that effect, right? It's masking the effect. Now if I click on X again to switch back to white over here and I paint again, it's going to show that effect again. The effect starts showing up, and that's how the layer mask works. black heights and white reveals. So well, we've looked at adjustment layers and blending modes. I didn't know it was further in the slides. So adjustment layers allows you to change colors, tones, or brightness without touching the original layer, right? It gives you freedom to design non-destructively. Now, what is non-destructive design? It's editing a design in a way that preserves the original layers, right? It preserves the original layers or the original content, allowing changes to be reversed or adjusted at any time without losing the original work. Let's say I was using some software or app like Pixel Lab or CorelDRAW. If I've done something like this and I've turned it to black and white, it's actually going to be difficult for me to change everything back. Look at how I just changed it back. I just turned off this adjustment layer. So this is non-destructive. If we were designing destructively and we've changed it to black and white, I will have to keep on clicking on Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z repeatedly until I get back to the point where it was colored and not black and white. That sounds like a lot of work, right? And lastly, we'll be looking at blending modes, right? Now, blending modes are applied to a particular layer. It changes how a layer interacts with the layer under it. Remember, an adjustment layer is a layer on its own that affects what is under it. But a blending mode is an effect, a kind of effect you add to a particular layer to change how it interacts with the layers under it. Let's bring in this ash background we have here. Let's put it at the top. Yeah, I actually don't want it to be at the very top. Hope you remember how to scale Ctrl T to bring out the transform controls. So I'm going to drag this down to the background. Let's rename it effects. Now obviously you can see it's covering my whole background, but I want to use it to create an effect, not that I want it to cover my background. So I'm going to come here to where we have normal. This is where you change blending mode. So let's click on it and we kind of experiment with which one works. Yeah, I think with screen I can at least see my background. Let me hide it. Yes, my background is still there and visible. So I can reduce the opacity of this so that I can just see a bit of the effect and it does not affect my design so much. This is 38%, you can use 35. Now if I hide this, you can see the effect goes off, but if I put it on, the effects come back, but I can still see the layer behind it. So it's just changing the way a layer interacts. And with this we actually have our very first design. Yeah, it looks simple, but you start from somewhere. How do you export? You come to file, export, and export as. You can see the shortcuts here. Ctrl Shift Alt W. It's a whole lot to cram, but that's what I use anyway. It's going to become part of you the more you export. So let's click on this, export as. Your export settings. You want to export as a PNG or a JPEG. Let's just use PNG here. That's basically the only thing you change here, either PNG or a JPEG. Then click on export. It opens up your Windows Explorer. You can name your documents now. I'm going to name it my first Photoshop design. Then click on save. Yeah, and you have your design saved. Yeah, notice we've actually not saved our Photoshop file itself. I just exported it. Now if we close this and we lose this file, you are not going to be able to edit it because the PNG is not editable. Make sure you always save your files. So Ctrl S to save the file itself and name it my first design. So this is going to be a PSD file. A PSD file or a PSB file. My first design, then you save. Yeah, it's saved now, so you can simply close it and locate wherever you saved your file to. If you worked along on this with me, you can post it on social media and tag me. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, whatever social media platform you're using. I'm going to drop my handles in the description below. See you in the next class.